most directly to you, that you would in turn fill us with your presence. Father, as the Christmas season is now upon us again, we would ask that you would make it to be everything that Christmas is supposed to be. The chorus of angels sang out to those shepherds, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace and goodwill towards men." Well, Father, that's what we want. We want to bring glory to you with our lives, with what we say and how we treat each other, and even just the very attitudes that we carry in ourselves. We want to bring glory to you. And we certainly want to bring peace and goodwill to everyone around us, because you know more than anyone that there's a real lack of that. So help us, Lord, to be peacemakers. Help us, Lord, to be doers of goodwill. We do pray for those that are going this week from our church and from our neighboring churches around the Colorado to bring offerings to the Navajo people. I just pray this will be a real uplifting experience for everyone involved. Our people, the Navajos, may you bind them all together in the same spirit of love and joy that only you can bring, and that our people would come back inspired and sharing that inspiration with the rest of us. And may we all become more and more aware of the needs and the hurts of the people around us, and then help us to show our love to them and our care for them in practical ways. Jesus, we remember, said to his disciples, "Freely you have received, then go on and freely give." We want to be that. We want to do that. And now, Lord, give to us the insights that we need as we look at your word. We pray this in your name. Amen. You may be seated. We'll be looking at, I guess you would say, that maybe the first of the stories that have to do with the Christmas event in Luke's Gospel, the first chapter, the story of the birth of John the Baptist being foretold to his father, Zechariah. Luke chapter 1, beginning at the 5th verse to the 25th verse. In the time of Herod the king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah. His wife Elizabeth was also a descendant of Aaron. Both of them were righteous in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. But they were childless because Elizabeth was not able to conceive, and they were both very old. Once when Zacharias' division was on duty and he was serving as priest before God, he was chosen by lot, according to the custom of the priesthood, to go into the temple and burn incense. And when the time for the burning of incense came, all the assembled worshipers were praying outside. Then an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing at the right side of the altar of incense. And when Zacharias saw him, he was startled, and he was gripped with fear. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife, Elizabeth, will bear you a son, and you are to call him John. He will be a joy and delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He's never to take wine or other fermented drink, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit even before he is born. He will bring back many of the people of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will go on before the Lord in the spirit of power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord." Zechariah asked the angel, "How can I be sure of this? I'm an old man, and my wife is well along in years." The angel said to him, "I'm Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God. I've been sent to speak to you and to tell you this good news. And now You will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at their appointed time." Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah and wondering why he stayed so long in the temple. When he came out, he could not speak to them. They realized he had seen a vision in the temple, for he kept making signs to them, but remained unable to speak. When his time of service was completed, he returned home. After this, his wife Elizabeth became pregnant, and for 5 months remained in seclusion. "The Lord has done this for me," she said. "In these days he has shown his favor and taken away my disgrace among the people." I want to talk to you for a few minutes, and actually probably the bulk of my message this morning has to do with awe, the experience of awe. I don't know how this happened, and if you're responsible for it, don't tell me. But somehow in the last couple of decades, the word awesome has come to be the word that many people use to describe experiences that we used to say were cool or neato, you know. And I realize that every generation has its own pet words, if you notice that. I'm just be honest with you, I'm still holding out hope that groovy will come back into the vernacular, but still waiting on that. But I really do wish, and listen, if you use awesome in the way that I'm about to make fun of, go right ahead, that's fine, but I will make fun of it. But I just wish that whoever chose awesome as their go-to word to use for any experience that is at all pleasant, positive, or unusual, I wish they would have selected some other word. Because I believe awesome should be held in reserve for special occasions only, sort of like your mother's china. The word awesome, I think we will all understand this. It means it's something that elicits awe. And so that prompts us to say, well, what is awe exactly? And here's what the Oxford Dictionary describes the feeling of awe to be. It's a feeling of reverential respect mixed with fear or wonder. And I think it's safe to say that a lot of people that use the word awesome, they're probably not experiencing fear or wonder or anything along that line. I distinctly remember one time some years ago being waited on at a restaurant by this waitress, and she must have used the word awesome about every fifth or sixth word. I mean, awesome, yes, it was awesome, thank you. And I'll make fun of you, too. I just remember when I was giving her my order, I said, okay, and I'll have a house salad with that. And she goes, awesome, you know, and I couldn't tell if at that moment she was experiencing reverential respect or fear or wonder or all of the above. I don't know, but I'll just say for myself anyway, my moments of feeling true awe have been few and far between. I've shared already, I know with some of you anyway, some of those times when I felt what I would call true awe. I have this, it's a vague memory. I don't remember the specifics of the event as much as I do the feeling that accompanied it. And that was, I was probably 5 or 6, and my family, my parents took us out somewhere in the country. This is in Oklahoma, and we visited this chapel. I think it must have been a Catholic chapel. Again, I don't remember. What I remember was that the statuary, the windows, it was not during a service. It was just on probably a Saturday. We were just left to walk around in the sanctuary. But I just remember receiving a feeling of transcendence, a feeling of something holy is going on here. On maybe the more secular or horizontal level, I experienced awe when I walked. You've heard me talk about walking into the room in which Abraham Lincoln was taken after he was shot. It was across the street from Ford's Theater in the Peterson House. And I had been in that room before, but on this occasion, and this is the only time of the 4 or 5 times I've been there, when they had on display on the bed in which he was laid, where he died, a pillowcase that had about this large of a blood stain on it, and I was slow to believe that was actually, until I asked the security guard standing next to the bed, is that actually the blood of Abraham Lincoln? And he said, yes, it is. I had the same feeling of, it really took my breath away. I felt like this is unreal. I felt largely the same feeling when just about 3 years ago, Christy and I visited the tomb of Lincoln in Springfield, Illinois, and his body is buried about 10 feet below. It's encased in solid concrete because they had problems with grave robbers toward the beginning of his time of being buried. But just to know that the body of Abraham Lincoln was directly below my feet, just 10 feet, it really did elicit a feeling of awe. And I, to a lesser extent, I would say, but still, I felt a sense of awe. You know, we were privileged to visit the Holy Land and saw many sites, of course, that were sacred. But the one that maybe hit me the most was when we visited the synagogue in Nazareth, where you may recall the story that Jesus in that synagogue read from the scroll of the book of Isaiah about what the Messiah would do in relating to the poor and so on. And then he folded up the scroll and announced to the people in the synagogue, today, this day has been fulfilled in your midst. And it was the synagogue, I think probably the reason why it affected me more than some of the other sites was that this was exactly what I had always pictured whenever I had read that story. It looked exactly like what I had thought that synagogue would look like. And I've had other moments over the years, and one of which I will talk about later. But what they all had in common was just what that dictionary definition spoke of, a feeling. They all brought to me a feeling of reverence, a feeling really of a bit of fear, not in the terrorized sense, but in the sense of I'm somehow not worthy to be fully experiencing what I'm experiencing right now, and a fear and a sense of wonder. And the other thing that I would include in that, along with reverence and fear and wonder, is that I also gained, whenever I experience awe, a sense of transcendence. And the word transcendence meaning a feeling of being lifted up out of your normal life into some kind of a realm that makes time seem to stop for a moment. I'm calling my sermon series for the season of Christmas the awe of Christmas. And I think that's appropriate. I think it's appropriate to associate awe with Christmas. I find that the experience of awe seems to apply more to Christmas than it does any other religious holy days, even Easter. I mean, Easter you think of as celebratory. It's a time of renewal. It's springtime. It's uplifting and so on. But a lot of the carols even of Christmas, and we sang one of them this morning, elicit that feeling of awe. O come, Emmanuel. Silent Night. What child is this? They all kind of seem to try to connect to that feeling of awe that you get when you read the Christmas story. The climax to the story that we have in Luke, and we'll be looking at it here in a couple of weeks, is after the shepherds have come and visited the Holy Family there in the stable at Bethlehem. We read this in Luke chapter 2, verse 19. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. You get the picture that she's experiencing awe. As much as a woman who had just given birth could experience anything other than fatigue, she's pondering these things that probably their full meaning hasn't come home to her yet. And I would just say to all of us that that's what we all should do with our awe-producing experiences, that we should all keep them in our hearts, keep them in our memories, and ponder over them. Ponder over your most meaningful experiences, because the fact is, and we all know this, that a lot of the most important truths that you and I have come to rely upon or carry deeply in our lives, they're not always self-apparent right at first. It takes some pondering sometimes to realize what has just happened to me, and how should I respond to this? To describe the total experience of awe, or at least how I have experienced it, and I've read other stories enough to know that I'm not the only one that has felt these kinds of things. There's one more type of experience I would bring up, and that's when, have you ever felt a sense of transcendence, a sense of being lifted up out of your normal experience, and it almost seems to come from nowhere? It's just like you're going through your life, and almost from out of nowhere, without your expecting it at all, there's this feeling that comes that makes you feel like you're outside of where you were just a moment ago. You're feeling something very, very uplifting. Now, something, for me anyway, something usually triggers it. Like a painting. You may see a painting, and there's something about that painting. For me, it's usually a painting of like a pastoral scene, a pond and green hills and cattle perhaps, but or even a scene in a movie, or something that you're reading in a book. They trigger that feeling of awe, but the feeling that you get seems out of proportion to the trigger. Why would that painting have that effect on me? And you may well be standing right next to somebody that's looking at the same thing you are, and you can tell just by looking at them it's not affecting them that way at all. I'll go ahead and give you some examples from my life where this feeling of awe seemed to sneak up on me. I remember watching, I believe it was the first time I ever saw the movie White Christmas. And if you haven't seen White Christmas, at the end of the movie, you remember the story. The main characters are in Vermont, and they've had a lack of snow that's really hurting the business of the inn that they're staying in, and so on. But of course, at the end of the movie, snow finally comes, and they're inside the inn, and they're having this big hoopla of the retired general. Again, if you haven't seen it, I've just bored you probably, but but that somebody looks outside and sees that snow is falling. And Danny Kaye character and Bing Crosby character, I think those are the two guys that they pull the barn doors open to reveal so that the hundreds of people that are inside the inn see that it snows covering the ground already. And then along comes, with perfect timing, this horse-drawn sleigh. And it's just as quintessential of a winter scene as you can possibly make. Well, I remember watching that for the very first time, and it developed in me a hunger of some kind of a heavenly experience. It was something that it was creating in me, just seeing that scene, that I couldn't really put into words. For one thing, I was too young, but even as an adult, if that had hit me for the first time, I don't think I could put into words what it was that I wanted, but I know I wanted something. The best description of what I was hungering for was made for me by C.S. Lewis, who wrote about this whole thing of awe and these sort of secret desires. He talks about various seasons convey the idea. He said there's a difference between autumn and the idea of autumn. There's a difference between winter and the idea of winter. Now, if that doesn't make sense to you, I'm sorry. This is perhaps sounding like gibberish, but it's a very difficult thing for me to put into words this feeling that is very treasured for me, and I hope maybe at least some of you feel the same way. Let me tell you of another experience that I've had, similar, but this has got more of a religious feel to it. I think I was in the 3rd grade. It was the final day of school before the Christmas break, and I remember that the school I was a part of there in Texas, they made that last day before Christmas nothing but Christmas-related activities. It was a fun day. Every class going into that last day was expected to decorate their room for Christmas. I remember our class made those paper chains, out of construction paper, and we had one going all the way around the room, and then a little tree with lights on it, and so on. And so part of the activities were each classroom, each class of students was allowed to go through and look at it was like an open house, all of the other classrooms to see how they had decorated them. And it was also a time we would have a party with the exchanging of gifts and drinking red punch and eating Christmas cookies and so on. It was just a fun day. And one of the things that we did, and this shows you how times have changed, is that we went into the school cafeteria auditorium, and we sat up on the stage on some bleachers. The lights were turned down, and we sang Christmas carols, Christmas songs and carols, both secular as well as religious. And I can still see the words to the songs were projected on a screen using slides that not only had the words to the song, but also in the background graphics, artwork that went with this particular song. And the moment that stood out for me was when we were singing "O Little Town of Bethlehem." And the artwork on that slide for "O Little Town of Bethlehem" was, as you would expect, this little Bible-era village, supposed to be Bethlehem, at nighttime. You could see lights on in the different houses in the village. And up in the sky, of course, were the stars, as well as the Star of Bethlehem itself. And beyond what I just told you, I really don't have anything to tell you more about it except the feeling that I got, and even that I probably, again, won't tell it to you adequately, but I just had, when I was looking at that picture of the town of Bethlehem at nighttime, singing the song, I just had this deep experience of peace and reverence and awe. Even though I wasn't mature enough to know to call it awe, that's exactly what I was experiencing at that time. Now, I would say that an experience as fleeting as that, I mean, it was over for me probably in a matter of a minute or two at the most. But an experience like that, if you've had them, I will just say, they probably won't come to much of anything in your life if you don't, like Mary, store it up in your heart and ponder over it. If you just say, well, that was, and you may not even do this much paying attention to it. You may just let it come and go, and that's it. But surely you would have to say that that's unusual. I mean, you know what life is like most of the time. Most of the time we're thinking about things that are immediately around us, the people that we got to, be cordial to, the stop and go traffic that we're driving in, the deadlines that we have to face at our work. Are we going to be able to make ends meet financially, and so on and so on. But these moments of awe, all of that gets, for a moment, suspended. And there's this feeling of peace and transcendence, uplift. It's unusual. It's not normal. And you know that whenever something physical that is out of the ordinary happens, like a loud explosion that we hear down the block, or somebody tells us, or we hear somehow a report of the sudden death of a young person in their 20s or 30s or 40s, when those kinds of unusual events happen, we always want to know what happened. Fill me in. What was the meaning? What exploded? Why did that person die so young? Well, you may be thinking that I'm making too much out of these moments of awe, but I don't think so. I would be interested in knowing what is behind these occasional experiences that come our way that make us feel like we're being lifted up out of our normal emotional lives into this feeling that makes me hunger for something that I can't even put into words. And it comes and it goes. If you've ever read C.S. Lewis's children's books, the Chronicles of Narnia, you may remember the first book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The wardrobe was a passageway that these children stumble onto, and it takes them into Narnia, this fantasy land where angels talk, and the White Witch has got an evil hand on things, and Aslan, the figure of Christ, is there to save. But the crazy thing about that wardrobe is the next time that they try to go through that wardrobe to get into Narnia, it's just a wardrobe. They're met with a wooden back wall. And it's Lewis's way of saying, don't think that you can control divine moments. They come without you even predicting it. But when they come, he's saying, there's a lot attached to it if you will explore it. That's why I say I would like to know what is the meaning of this feeling of awe? Now, I will just tell you, if you want to be introspective like I am, be prepared for the fact that there are some people that are prejudiced towards flattening out every single transcending experience that people have. They will give it, some will give it a psychological explanation. Sigmund Freud was really good at that. Anything that was unusual, anything that was thought of by some people as being maybe spiritual, he said, no, this is what that really is about. Or some people will assign it some physical cause. You remember Scrooge saying that he thought the reason why he saw that, was it Marley's ghost? He attributed it to the gruel that, I don't even know what gruel is, but I'm pretty sure I don't want it. But he said it must have been that gruel that I ate just a while ago. But not everybody feels that way about the moments of awe. That it's just some kind of psychological quirk or some kind of physical manifestation. You remember the story in the Old Testament when Moses discovers God in the burning bush, the bush that's on fire but doesn't burn up, and he goes and talks to God, but before he gets started in the dialogue, God says to him, take your shoes off, Moses, because you're standing on holy ground. Well, the poet Elizabeth Barrett Browning, she used that story to make a point about the nearness of God in one of her poems. She wrote these words. She said, earth is crammed with heaven, and every common bush is afire with God. But only he who sees takes off his shoes, and the rest sit around and pick blackberries. Yeah. I think that's true. Two people can go through the same experience, and one is completely unaffected. And the other, it may be life-transforming. Only he who sees, she said, takes off his shoes. The story that we read earlier from Luke's gospel about Zacharias' visit from the angels telling him that he and Elizabeth are going to finally have a baby, the future John the Baptist. That's Luke's way of telling us that this coming of Jesus into the world was not an isolated incident at all. Luke wants us to know that there were more than a few supernatural events that happened. The angel visits Zechariah. Zechariah is muted for not trusting in the angel. Elizabeth, in her older age, becomes pregnant. Mary also receives an angelic visit. So does Joseph. That's in another gospel. But it's Luke's way of telling us what Elizabeth Browning was saying in that poem. Earth seems to be crammed with heaven. But the fact is, that's not always obvious, is it? About earth. It doesn't always seem to be crammed with heaven. It doesn't always seem like heaven is just right here. And we can all relate, I think, probably all of us can relate easily to Zechariah's hesitancy to accept the angel's announcement that Elizabeth, his wife, after several years of failing to become pregnant, she is now finally going to bear a child. And that's what he had been praying for, according to the angel. But now that it's actually coming to pass, are you sure? We can relate to that. We can relate to how easy it is to get used to the normal way of things. And any report that something out of the ordinary that's really could well be a divine miracle, we can relate to old Zacharias and are you sure? Although I will have to say that if I heard from an angel, I think I would go with whatever he said, you know. But what Luke seems to be doing with this story, among other things, not only telling us how the birth of John the Baptist came about, but he's also wanting to awaken his readers, which includes you and me, to the fact that despite what seems to be a lot of inactivity on God's part, a lot of gaps in between his obvious works, what Luke wants us to know is that God is still very, very much involved in our world. And of course, we will see in a couple of weeks how he showed up in a pasture outside of Bethlehem to a group of shepherds. Luke is telling his readers, don't get too used to normalcy. Now, there's a paradox here. You can't function without going through life doing things that you normally do. I was sharing with the guys at our Tuesday Bible study how I remember when Dad was pastoring here, and we had, I don't seem like 5 or 6 guys that worked over here at the Air Traffic Control Center. And one of the guys told us about sitting next to another air traffic controller who was getting requests from the pilot for some coordinates, some directions. And the controller wasn't responding. And finally the guy, I don't remember which fellow it was from our church, said, "Are you not going to say anything to him?" And he said, "God hadn't told me what to say yet." I don't know if any of you are planning to fly. I mean, if they ask religious or non-religious, you might want on that one go with the non-religious flight. But anyway, you know, that was crazy. Something was wrong up here with that guy. But you can get too used to normalcy. I hear Luke saying, in effect, don't give up on experiencing awe, because God is all around us. Emmanuel, God is with us. And although it does take a certain amount of trust on our part, we need to always carry around with us an expectation that God could show up at any moment. I mean, he really could show up sometime this next week for you, going shopping, talking with somebody as they share something unusual about their life, or just in the quiet of your moments with God. I'm just going to tell you, make clear to you what really prompted me to do a series called The Awe of Christmas. And that is that I really do have a hope that this year, this Christmas season, we might recapture something of the awe of Christmas. Now, my experience, again, I keep referring to myself, and I don't know how well you relate to this, but my experience has been as a child, Christmas almost always brought a sense of awe with it from so many different experiences. You know, the music. I've told about how when I was a kid, Firestone and Goodyear used to make available these albums, and they were like best of, they were all these famous vocalists and choirs and orchestras that did favorite Christmas songs. You could get them for $1, and then I remember Dad complaining the year that they went up from $1 to $2, but we went ahead and splurged and got them still. We got them every year. We got a stack of them. You know, when the old stereo, to me, the ultimate Christmas experience was to take all of our Christmas albums and stack them on our phonograph, on our stereo, and turn off all of the lights except for the Christmas tree lights, and put my head equidistant between the two speakers so it felt like the music was coming from within my brain, and I could just listen to those songs for hours. Because it produced awe. And my experiences of awe came from music and seeing lights and Christmas foods and church services and gift giving and so on. It was something I looked forward to enjoying year after year. But I'm now going to confess to you that nowadays awe doesn't seem to come as easily as it used to. I feel strongly you can't fabricate awe. I almost resent attempts that seem to be made to try to push us into a feeling. I don't think you can fabricate awe, but I do think that you and I can keep an openness to it. I do think that you and I can carry around within us a spirit of expectancy. And by carrying around that spirit of expectancy, you can have a greater likelihood, I think, of having the wonderful experience of awe. It can return to your hearts. So I'm gonna try to head off at the pass. Any of you who may be prone to say about Christmas this year, oh, it's mainly for children. It's mainly for children of the Lord. So I would say that an openness to awe seems to be, to me, one of the main reasons why Luke wrote what he did in his wonderful story of Christmas. And it only stands to reason, at least this makes perfect sense to me, that if, like Barrett Browning said, if earth in Luke's day was crammed with heaven, it only makes sense to me that it's still just as crammed with heaven today as it ever was. But I agree with Elizabeth Browning when she says, but only he who sees will take off his shoes. So here's my desire, is that this Christmas season, I want our church, I want you, I want me to be one of those who sees, okay? So let's stand and let's sing. I tell you, let's sing in conclusion just the chorus to "O Come All Ye Faithful," all right? And you know it well enough that you can make it a prayer as you sing, all right? Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Christ Lord, show us how to be ready when you break through in a special way and bring to our hearts that all that only you can bring. And help us, Lord, to be prepared for the fact that it may come in very unexpected ways. But I know my own experience has been when you come, we know it. We know it. So help us, Lord, to be ready. In your name, amen. God be with you.